Hello, class. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, great.
Mr. Jason, I wanted to ask, I saw our syllabus and apparently our midterm is next week. So do you have any pointers for us, or like perhaps if the exam's going to be online or in person, that sort of stuff?
The exam will be online, and I honestly haven't I haven't been keeping an eye on the syllabus, so I didn't realize that the midterm is next week. So yikes, next week. All right. Yeah, if do you have any other questions about it?
Maybe something like, how would the format be? Would it be similar to Gen Psych where it was MCQ on Blackboard?
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
my plan. It will be multiple choice questions on Blackboard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, last question. Would it be on class time from 1 to 3, 4 p.m.?
Yes, yes, it
Okay.
would. Yes. That will, yeah. That's right.
Mr. Jason, do we have a pop quiz today?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Someone asked me to upload previous Zoom lectures. I think I have already uploaded all of them. Have I not? I don't know. I thought I did. Let's see. I have Blackboard open right here. I've got recording 3. Oh, you're right. I haven't uploaded 4 or 5 yet. My apologies. I will do that today after class. Sorry about that. Thanks for mentioning that. Someone asked, what about guidelines? Like guidelines for preparation for the midterm exam? Yeah. Lecture notes. I recommend lecture notes as a source of study. Reading the slides is adequate if you understand them. Yeah. The slides are a representation of textbook assigned readings. The slides don't cover everything in the textbook, but the slides cover what I feel is important. So my exam will reflect what I think is important. So it would be content covered by slides. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to have a 1-minute meditation for good practice. So I'm starting it now. If you would please get in a comfortable position and prepare to relax for 1 minute. Starting now. That's 1 minute. Stop. All right. Someone asked how many questions would be on the exam. Maybe 50. No, there's not going to be a study guide. Someone asked if there's a study guide. No, there is not. Okay. I'm going to go to the lecture now. Someone asked if it's open book, if the exam is open book. Yeah, it would be. Open book, open internet. There will be a time limit, maybe 2 hours. I think, yeah, 2 hours is a good time limit. All right. I will think about details of how to run the exam if I want to attempt to make it similar to the Gen Sci final exam or not. I will think more about that. Okay, now.
Then after you've decided, would you email us?
Yeah, that's right. I would communicate by email. Oh. Yeah, I have most everyone's email. I haven't confirmed if I have every single person's email. There was the data sheet on which you signed up for your groups. I hope that everyone put their email address in that sheet. If you haven't, then I wouldn't necessarily have your contact info. So please make sure you have your email on that Google sheet where you chose your groups. All right. Okay. So today's topic is survey research. This is a popular form of research in psychology. When people answer a survey question, they need to do all of these 6 steps. They need to interpret the question, retrieve relevant information, form a tentative judgment about their subjective beliefs or feelings, and then convert to a response and edit that response as necessary. Context affects how people interpret questions. If I'm answering let's see. If I'm answering about my diet, but the previous question was, how much do I exercise? Or how much do I weigh? Then my answer to questions about my diet might be more defensive or more attentive to my healthier choices, or more attentive to my unhealthier choices. So where my attention goes when I'm answering a question is influenced by the questions that I've already answered. That's called context effect. how do we guard against context effects? We can randomize and counterbalance the items and orders. That doesn't really prevent them. It simply spreads them out. It spreads out many possible context effects. And then when we average across all of the respondents' answers, we believe and hope that the context effects are sometimes this way, sometimes that way, sometimes directing attention toward what we want, sometimes away from. So if you really don't want any context effects, then don't ask any other questions. Because the questions you ask in the survey affect how people think about the subsequent questions. Any thoughts or questions or comments about this? All right, next. Types of items. So when you're writing your survey, if you want to use this approach to research, you can ask open-ended or closed-ended questions. An open-ended one is like, what's your favorite color? Where the answer is not limited to any particular set of choices. People could even answer some made-up color, like sunshine color. So then open-ended questions really don't set limits. It's just expected that people will stick to the content of the question. Closed-ended. This is quicker to answer and score. You can have qualitative or quantitative. Qualitative questions, do you like red or blue better? Or do you like blue? The reason these are called qualitative is because the answer is not a number and cannot be numbered, or it cannot be translated to a number other than 0 and 1. The reason that you can translate to 0 and 1 is because 0 and 1, although it looks like these are quantities, but 0 and 1 symbolize qualities. Like the 0 and 1 in a computer represent closed circuit, open circuit. Anyway, so there's qualitative questions and there's quantitative questions. Like, how much do you like a color? Okay.
For open-ended questions, is there a objective way of measuring all the answers and like changing it into data since it's open-ended?
Yeah. Because once you get all of your answers, you can count themes or types of responses. But to do that, you need to come up with categories, such as how many responses are in the positive, how many responses are in the negative. That kind of categorization of answers allows you to quantify or count. Or you could measure answers on your own scale, your own rating scale. For example, you could rate how optimistic participants sound or think about themselves, how positively people think about gun control measures or something, you can rate those answers on a scale, and then you have quantified something that was an open-ended qualitative response. So it's possible to reconceptualize your data from quantitative to qualitative, or vice versa.
Thank
I
you.
think like a easy to change quantitative to qualitative is do a median split, where you divide answers according to these participants answered more than average on the scale, and those answered less than average on the scale. So here are the high scorers, those are the low scorers. That's changing a quantitative to a qualitative, a categorization of responses. But then that's how you treat the answers. And this slide is about how you write the questions. Any further thoughts? Here are 3 examples of rating scales. So all of these are quantitative measures. Now the first one, there's no numbers. So how is this quantitative if there's no numbers? But conceptually, you can see that there's a spectrum of agreement / disagreement, where the polarities are on the top and bottom, strongly agree, strongly disagree. And each option is like equidistant from the one above and the one below, at least it's easy to imagine so, or translate it to be so. In other words, it looks like a 1 to 5 rating scale. And you can treat it like that. So you can take responses on such a scale and code them as numbers instead of as words. So participant number 1 marked 2, agree, or marked disagree. So you can translate to 4. Strongly disagree as 5, for example. That's helpful because when you're entering responses into a database, it's easier to record numbers than words, and it's easier. I mean, it's possible to find averages with numbers, but not with words. And then the next one is just another example of a rating scale, where you put your tags on both ends of both poles of the rating scale. And then the bottom one is a neat kind of rating scale where you're not forced to choose a number, a whole number. If you want 3.5, you can mark 3.5, or there's no numbers here, so you could mark 3.3, 3.2, any number. I mean, it's not an interval scale. It's called a ratio or continuous scale, the bottom version, the bottom scale. So what you do for this bottom scale is you mark a tick or an X or anyway, something you mark on the line where you want your judgment, where you agree. Any questions?
So how does this affect the way the people respond? As you said before, that sometimes little things affect the way people think. Like if the survey is about your weight and how healthy you are, will become more defensive. But if it's more lax, um, they can be more open because they're not realizing what they're giving out. How does these three types of questions affect the way they answer?
Great question. Um, one thing, and the book talks about this, if you have a neutral response, it will attract people who don't want to think too much, too deeply. Like if they're in a hurry, or they don't really care about the study, or they're tired, distracted, pressured for time. Having that neutral option in the middle gives them a sort of license to not think too hard, because they might believe that if they mark the middle one, they're not hurting or helping the researcher, is something that they might think. So it's possible to affect how participants respond by including or excluding a middle neutral option. So if I want my respondents to think deeper about something, or I worry that they're not going to think deeply enough for my own research purposes, if I include a neutral option, I might just exclude the neutral option and say, you have to choose whether you agree or disagree. So that's something to keep in mind. Thanks for thanks for asking. In my opinion, the bottom one, where people have to mark their answer on a continuous line rather than numerical intervals, the continuous line seems to be stronger in my mind, in my opinion, because it's more exact, and if people are like, well, I'm between a 3 and a 4 and I can't really make up my mind, they might persuade themselves one way or the other, when actually it was unnatural for them to persuade themselves one way or the other, because they really naturally felt right in the middle. So I like that bottom form of rating. That would be my favorite one here, I guess. But yeah, I think the format of the question does affect how people answer. So there are some small strengths and weaknesses to the particular format of your rating question. Any other questions or comments? This is a guide, the Brousseau model. This is a guide for helping you to write effective survey questions. Try to make your questions brief, relevant, unambiguous, specific, and objective. And here in this table, we have examples of poor and effective survey questions written, and to illustrate the criterion, the Brousseau criterion. So in your own time, make sure you understand that slide. Next slide, sampling. There's probability sampling, and there's non-probability sampling. Probability is ideal because by considering the population and sampling according to the probabilities of any one person being of any one group, you more closely approximate the population with your sample. So there's simple random sampling. This is when you have a very large sampling frame. I mean, ideally very large. And then you just randomly draw from that sampling frame. The sampling frame is all of the people that you could have sampled. So if you're sampling university students, your sampling frame is the university students. But if you're sampling psychology students from a particular classroom, that's your sampling frame. If you're for example, if I'm sampling Americans, I could sample from their social security numbers. If you're sampling Thai students at Chulalongkorn University, you could sample from ID numbers, from an exhaustive list of all student ID numbers of active students, students that are current students, for example. All right, so that's what sampling frame means. Proportionate and disproportionate stratified sampling, random sampling, is sampling to reach target numbers from each stratum. What's a stratum? A stratum is a section of the pie. For example, if you want to do proportionate stratified sampling by age, you would want to have percentages. You would want to know the percentage of people in your population that are within each age range. So, for example, let's say that in Thailand, the number of people that is below the age of 5, let's say, is 10%. If you wanted your sample to include equal proportions, that means proportionate, equal proportions of all age groups. If you're sampling by age and you want to have a really representative sample of all the ages in proportion to the actual ages of people in the population of Thailand, you'd want to select in your sample exactly 10% of your participants below the age of 5. That way, you're keeping in proportion to the population. So that's called proportionate stratified random sampling. And then let's say there's a 20%, 10, or let's say 9%. Never mind. I think I already gave enough good example with the 5 years and younger. So the 5 years and younger is a stratum. Another stratum is 5 to 10. Another stratum is 10 to 15, 15 to 20. So each of these age ranges is another stratum, another section of the pie, where the entire pie is all possible age groups. So if let's say you're sampling to make a representative sample of Thailand. And you know that 65 and older might represent 20% of Thailand. Then to be proportionate, you'd want to select 20% of your participants as being in that age group. If you selected more than that, that would be disproportionate. If you selected less than that, that would be disproportionate. So, any questions about that? So if there were 5% of the population for every stratum, and there were 10 strata, and I selected according to that, and that reflected the real population, then I would have a proportionate stratified random sample. All right, next one, non-probability sampling. This is when you're not concerned with the population representation. So you're not being so picky and perfectionist about your results will generalize to the population or reflect the population. If you're not so picky about that, then you don't have to do you don't have to do probability sampling. So you could do non-probability, which is like, here are examples. There's convenience sampling, where you just recruit people that you can recruit easily. That's what we do in psychology most of the time. I mean, a lot of the time. Yeah, most. Probably 80%. I don't know. But I think it's safe to say most psychological research is convenience. Based on convenience sampling, it's non-probability sampling. All right, then there's snowball method, which is when you ask your participants to find participants for you. Ask them, when they come in, they do their study, they participate, and then you ask them, can you nominate 5 more people or 2 or 3 more people that we could contact? Please provide their contact details for us. That's the snowball approach. Then there's quota. Quota is like stratified sampling, where you recruit a target number per group or stratum. The difference is that quota is not necessarily reflective of population characteristics. You're not really interested in whether 20% of the population is retired over the age of 60 or 65. A bug landed on my lip. In quota research, you're looking for, let's say, 50% of your participants to be left-handed and 50% right-handed, regardless of whether the population of the world reflects that. Because your aim is not to reflect the population in your sample. The point might be to get a better grasp of how left-handers and right-handers differ from each other, for example. So quota is not concerned about population probabilities and proportions. Next one is self-selection, where participants select themselves for the study. They read about it, they hear about it, maybe it's advertised in a newspaper or magazine, or bulletin board, and they say, well, hey, the incentive is good because I will get paid, or I will get an experimental treatment for something that there's no treatment for it currently. So self-selection, that's one method. Any questions?
I think I read from somewhere that snowball sampling is good, especially if you're trying to find participants with like perhaps a disease of sorts. Like maybe it's a bit, how do you call it? I mean, like for example, if you want to talk about STDs, then I heard that snowball sampling is a good way to get participants because usually
Excellent.
the same.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for making that point. In general, snowball is when you don't have real clever or a good way to find more participants. In the case of STDs, it's hard to go asking people, do you have an STD? So STD stands for sexually transmitted disease. Because of the nature of that question itself and how sensitive it is and how taboo it is to reveal, to talk about or ask others. So yeah, snowball is a good approach for that. Any other comments or questions? Next slide, sampling bias. When a sample is not representative of its population, then you have sampling bias. If I recruited 50% left-handers and 50% right-handers, certainly left-handers would be oversampled if I was trying to extend my results to the population in general. Mail-in surveys, for example, distributed through a magazine will reach only a sub portion of the population, those interested in that magazine, or only those interested in contributing to that research. The results don't necessarily represent views of non-subscribers or views of non-contributors to the survey. Because of this, because of sampling bias, by selecting only those who respond to a call for participation, when you have any sampling bias, your results may not reflect the population or the reality of beyond your experiment. The best example of this was, I mean, a strong example of this was predicting voter outcomes in a presidential election once upon a time in America.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah,
They made a mistake because I think they got many votes from the rich, and they didn't get like votes from like each section of America. So they just took one cordon off sample of people that they perceived to be majority, even though it was completely wrong.
exactly. Which do you think is better, to sample 100 people without sampling bias, or to sample 10,000 people with sampling bias? If
100
you
people.
want to make a prediction about people in the population
100
100
people.
people without the sampling
Yeah.
bias.
without the sampling bias. Yes. With sampling bias, you cannot make generalizations. I mean, you can, but they're going to be wrong. So, yeah. Good. Using the internet to distribute surveys. It's a good idea. We live in the internet age. This is how we are going to deliver surveys. Of course, it's going to be through the internet from now on. The use of paper and pencil surveys is coming to an end and has come to an end already. Of course, some people are still going to use, but yeah. So here are some. I know SurveyMonkey, that's an easy to use one. It's pretty common, or let's see. I don't really know a lot of these. I know Qualtrics. Qualtrics is good because well, I mean, all of them are good, I guess. Each of them has their own pluses and minuses.
I mean, there's a very easy one. If I'm not wrong, you can use Line to create a survey.
Really?
Yeah, but you can do it in groups if I'm not wrong.
Oh, neat. Maybe you guys will use that for your research in this class, your data collection. I didn't know that. Is that something new?
I'm not sure how new it is, but I did use it before, so.
Nice. Hey, good. That's cool. What did you use it for?
Oh, it's usually I use it to decide on like what date to meet up for group projects and stuff.
Oh,
People can vote.
that's really neat.
I'm
Wow.
not sure if it's still there. I mean, I remember using it a while ago.
Yeah. Good. Smart. Thank you. Yeah. All right. I think we should have a break first. So it's 1:45. Can we have a 10-minute break and come back at 1:55?
Okay.
All right. Have a 10-minute break. Okay, welcome back from the break. It's 1:55. The remainder of the class is for these little exercises that come next on the slides. Think of a question that each of the following professionals might try to answer using survey research. All right, so we can do this as a class. A social psychologist, what's a kind of survey question they might ask? And then I can write that right here.
Do you often do what the group wants you to do? Wait, I need to reword that one. Do you often follow the flows of a crowd? No. I'm trying to say how am I'm trying to make this more precise.
How about that?
Yeah, that's much better. That's much better.
Do you often follow the opinions of the group? That's a good one. Yeah, social psychological question, because social psych is all about group behavior and group dynamics, how the individual relates to the group. Great one. All right, educational researcher. What's something that an educational researcher might ask as a survey question?
Do you believe you do well compared to the rest of your classmates?
Good. Yeah. Do you okay, let's say, do you do well or as well as your classmates?
On exams, maybe?
Exams. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Then the next one, the mayor of a large city. If the mayor wants to survey people in his city or her city.
Do you think the current mayor is doing a good job?
Good. Good. Are you satisfied? With the work of the current mayor, right? Good. Last one, the head of a university police force.
Do you have any suspicious activity to report in the campus?
Do you have any specific what?
Oh, sorry. I said, do you have any specific? Oh, crap! I lost what I was about to say. Um,
Yeah.
something about suspicious activity.
Yeah, I think
Oh, good.
I think Bambi's question in the chat is also pretty good.
That's scary. Do you
Let
feel
me read
safe?
it. Trying to read it. Do you feel safe? That's a great one. Well done, Bambi. I just love the sound of that question. It just cuts straight to such a deep thing, such a vital. I mean, that matters so much. Do you feel safe? It has important ramifications for so much. Next exercise. Write 3 survey items each for these aims. So 6 survey items total. I'd like you to do this in groups. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms now. And I want everyone in your groups to come up with 3 survey items each. Let's say about 5 or 6 people per group or so. Okay. Go to your groups. Classroom. All right. So you had a chance to discuss one another's survey items and try to make them better using the Brusso method. Were you able to improve any items? Can you give any examples of items that you improved?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we talked about one of the members' question, which was just a general, like, how many hours do you spend on social media? And then we talked about how we could try to narrow down what social media platform they're talking about. So we could have multiple questions that talk about, like, what social media platforms you use. And once they tick tick the ones that apply, we could ask, like, how many hours do you spend on Facebook? And then we could ask the hours. How many times do you spend on Instagram? Then ask how long they spend on each app.
Exactly. That's a kind of, I want to call it forking, but there may be a better word for it, where the next question you ask is dependent on how the respondent answered the previous question. So example, which social media apps do you use? Tick the boxes. And then as a result of the boxes that are ticked, the next question is about only those items that you ticked, that were ticked.
Yeah.
So if they did not tick Instagram, then there's no need to include any questions about Instagram after that. So that's really a good example of improving a question in a new way. Great. Or in the forking structure. Any others? Any other examples? I think these are useful and helpful to the rest of the class if you can give an example of how you improved a survey item. One or two more examples? Okay, maybe not. Anyway, the Brusso method helps you to check and revise and improve your questions. And if you have the Brusso concepts already absorbed and understood, then you will be a better survey question writer. And you might think, well, you're not planning to write surveys for a living in your future, but surprise, you might be asked to write a survey. You might think, well, I'm not qualified because I've never done survey research before. It doesn't matter, because the job of writing a survey may fall on you someday in your job. Surveying people's opinions is very important. So get skilled with it, everyone. All right. That's the last exercise. Okay, so I have now updated the slide here to show you that. Oh, let me share a slide here. Okay, so next week is our midterm exam. Surprise. I'm surprised, as surprised as you are. I wasn't keeping an eye on the syllabus very closely. So yeah, be prepared for that next week. And then in 2 weeks, I want you to turn in your group's paper. So maybe you've done it already. Maybe all of this is already done by your group. Great. Just upload it to Blackboard. I will create that assignment category to receive your papers. This is a first draft of your paper, so it's okay if if it's not that good.
So everything listed here are ones that you told us to do previously, right?
Yeah, that's right.
If we did all of that before, we can just like put them all together and just submit it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. If you were staying on top of the tasks like I kind of assigned you in previous weeks, then this should already be done. But if you haven't done it yet, you have 2 weeks. And so that next week, I mean, this week, you're just focusing on preparing for the exam. And that is the end of class today. Do you have any comments, questions, or concerns about anything in this class?
For the midterm exams next week, does it have to be next week? Like, is there no way to like move it like a week or?
I mean, we could. Why? Why would you like
Just-
it moved?
Just curious, because a few of my friends say like the midterms are starting like really early this sem.
Yep.
So the week after the res math exam, we do have the social organization exam.
Yeah, but that's on Monday, which is tomorrow. Oh wait, yeah.
Yeah,
You know what?
then it'll be
Yeah,
like-
never mind.
If we move it a week later, then it'll be like right next to the social org exam. So honestly, wouldn't it be better to have it a week earlier? Like maybe not, but just my personal like opinion on it.
Any other students? Do you want to weigh in on this? Okay. Someone wrote a chat, but I can't read it. Oh, here. Okay. So we'll keep it as is. So next week, midterm. All right. That's the end of class today. Anything else?
Do you have any tips for like the online thing? Because I have horrible luck when it comes to online exams. Like internet goes
Tips.
bad, or like I can't find what I'm looking for in the notes.
Search buttons.
Just when you're reading the question, take a phrase at a time and make sure you understand each part of the sentence. And same thing for all of the answer options. Multiple choice tests are designed to be tricky. I designed them to separate students who kind of know from students who know more. So they're designed to be tricky. But yeah, just no, I don't really have any other advice. Anything else? All right. So thanks for coming to class today, and good luck studying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Have a
you.
good week.
Would you send us an email talking about like how long the questions would be and at what time we do it, like any finalized?
Sure. I will finalize details and send you by email.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Bye.
Have a nice week.
Thanks.
How long it should be, like the essay,
The
the group's paper?
somewhere around like 2 to 4 pages, maybe 2 to 5.
Yeah, I think last time you told us for each article summary, we had to make it 1 page, like shorten it to 1 page.
Shorten it to 1 paragraph, actually.
Oh, yeah, 1 paragraph.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Bye.